to Stepping Up 2019. It's an honor to be here with all of you. My name is Sherry Phoenix, and I am the board president of David's Hope. So again, welcome. One of the things I wanted to say is that get some housekeeping things out of the way. The first is that the attorneys here that are present, there will be CLE credits for this for 3 hours. You can pick those up from Ray. Ray, if you could stand. There we right here. After the conference day, and she'll have those ready for you. Also, if there's any concerns in the room, such as like the mic not working that we had, please see Audrey. Audrey, if you could stand up. If there's any concerns, please see her about the food or anything of that nature. The bathrooms are located straight out the back doors to the right. And then also, I want to ask that all cell phones are put on silence or vibrate because we are recording the event. With that being said, again, welcome to the Stepping Up 2019. David's Hope is your host today, and we're part of the Mental Health Criminal Justice Coalition for Collaboration. And one of the things that we take pride in is this Stepping Up event every year. And the National Institute of Stepping Up, it's a national initiative, and it's to look at who is mentally ill in our jail and prison systems, and then look at how we can pull those individuals out. One of the things that I wanted to note, I was recently at a conference in DC on the national level of specialty courts. Arizona was recognized. We're the first state in the nation to have all 15 counties accounted for. We're really highlighted, so yes, thank you. Why are we here? We need to collaborate. We need to use our best practices, and that's what we're going to be talking about. We have to keep our communities safe and close those revolving doors. We're here because we're working together on the same issue statewide. We need to save our precious resources, and by doing this too, we're saving lives. So that's what I have to say about that, but I just wanted to give a shout out also to all the board members of David's Hope. If they could all please stand. I would like to say that every single person that works for David's Hope is volunteers. There are no paid salaries, and they are volunteers. And I am so impressed, and I'm so honored to be able to work with these individuals. Thank you. With that, I also would like to thank our platinum sponsors, which is Maricopa Integrated Health System. Our gold sponsor is Arizona Complete Health. Our silver sponsors, Care First Health Plan of Arizona and Mercy Care. Our bronze sponsors, which are Banner University Health Plans, Community Bridges, Connection Health Solutions, District Medical Group, Janssen Neuroscience, Optum, and Taros Health. Our community partners include Crisis Response Network, NARBA Institute, Steward Health, and Spectrum. Mary Lou?
Thank you. And Audrey, Justice Gould just came into the room. Do you want to help him find his seat? Justice Gould? Hi. Audrey's going to greet you and bring you up here. Thank you. And I'm Mary Lou Burnsick, Director of David's Hope. Is the sound okay? Are you guys hearing an echo? No? Yes, echo. Is it annoying to our, think it would matter if I got a different mic? No? Okay. Thank you all for being here. We have around 220 here today. We're thrilled that you're all able to be with us. So much to say and so little time to say it in. I want to thank our amazing panelists that are come in. I won't name each one right now, but we have Steve Julian, who's going to be, we have Ed Gilligan, who's going to be moderating, and many of you know our panelists already. So we're going to have two tremendous panels. They're not as long as they usually are, but it's going to be the highlight, I think. Definitely of the morning, listening. And the expertise that's in this room is tremendous. I want to give a special thanks to Dr. Joel DeVoskin for coming up from Tucson. And Dr. DeVoskin's really known not just across the nation, but internationally as well. So we're really grateful for you, Dr. DeVoskin, for coming up and sharing your time with us and your expertise. We know you've been doing this for a very long time. Sherry mentioned our sponsors, so I won't do that again, but we could not do this without the tremendous support of our sponsors. They have been faithful and consistent now for several years, and our movement is continuing to grow, stay strong. We're able to reach out to the counties that we need to be reaching out to. And we've been able to continue to bring people together. And like Sherry said, that's part of our work, bringing folks together. Let me have this real quick. So I wanted to talk about, just briefly, about stepping up the national initiative. You know, we also want to thank the National Alliance on Mental Illness, who has been a stalwart supporter of the national work, led here in our state by Jim Dunn. Jim, you want to stand and let's give Jim a shout out. Without the leadership that all of you have been providing, we would not be where we are. We're going to be recognizing folks here today from across the state, law enforcement, continuing to lead the way. I won't have law enforcement stand now. Maybe I will. Let's have them stand. If you're with law enforcement, would you mind standing? Let's give them a round of applause. That's fantastic. And a special thank you to, all the departments. And Sheriff Driscoll from Coconino County is going to be sharing with us during the awards, doing tremendous work up there in the north. He's the president of the Arizona Sheriff's Association. So thank you, Sheriff Driscoll, for being here. And a special shout out to the Mesa Police Department, who filled up a table here today. So usually I don't have our law enforcement people stand until the awards dinner, but I think we'll do it twice today since you guys have been so tremendous in working with us. Not just here today, but every day of the year. And that goes to all of the law enforcement agencies, sheriff's departments, and police departments across the state. I'll say it again as I do every year, that you truly have cleared the path in which we walk. And we are tremendously grateful. We're grateful for the work that you do on the street, and the jail commanders. Captain Bischoff, a jail commander from Mojave County, is going to be on one of the panels today. We're thrilled that he's going to be able to share with us. And you are the ones that see firsthand the results of our fragmented, broken mental health system. And I say that with duress, because I know we like to feel like we have good care, and in some cases we do. But overall, systemically, we still have many, many gaps. We still have many problems with crisis. When crisis happens, people not knowing what to do. And many of the honorees today that we're honoring have to do with either the work they've done in an actual emergency or the training and leadership that they've provided to others so that they can close those gaps when they come across them. And it takes a lot of out-of-the-box thinking to do that. And I know we have judges here today that are being honored for their innovative work in their counties. In some of very rural counties, such as Mojave, we have Judge Taylor and Judge Huerta. So we're just we are together traveling a road that's headed in the right direction. So that's just good to know. We don't need to turn around. We're not headed the wrong way. We're doing as good as we can do at this point with what we've been, what we have challenged us, the challenges that we have facing us. A lot of work and reform going on in a lot of different areas. Some of it has to do with what they want to call prison reform. I always get a little annoyed with the term because I say, what does that mean, new carpets in the prison? I don't know. But our Department of Corrections is here today, and that table I know is going to be full because you guys have a lot registered. They're spread out. Okay. But thank you to the Arizona Department of Corrections as well. And you guys have done tremendous work in trying to keep your ears open to our voices. I know, and every year we talk about this a little bit, that you kind of always have the devil's hat on because you are the mirror that looks us in the face of what our system has worked toward the end of, and that is being the largest provider of housing and treatment for people with mental illness in the state. And let me say that again, our jails and our prisons in the state of Arizona and across the nation remain our largest provider of mental health services. And that's why we're all still walking on that road to change that. The need has not been any reduced at all. We are starting to do a lot of work on the front end, and we continue to need to bring more big guns to the front end. I just want to talk a little bit about the Stepping Up initiative. The Stepping Up initiative nationally just had their over 500 counties that have signed on. So that is a big move forward. We have 43 states now that have joined, that have counties that have signed on. And 47% of the U.S. population lives in a Stepping Up county. There are several states as well that have created a statewide Stepping Up initiative. Wouldn't that be fantastic? If our state leadership signed on, that as the counties have done, to make reducing the numbers of people with mental illness who are incarcerated a top priority. As of now, Alabama, California, Iowa, Ohio, and Pennsylvania have launched statewide initiatives. To our credit, though, and what you'll be hearing in a bit when our panel gets started, is our Arizona Supreme Court is moving and shaking things up. And we have Don Jacobson here today, who's going to be, he is a program director for at the Arizona Supreme Court, and we're thrilled, Don, that you're here with us. And Don will be sharing a bit about the work that he's been doing in leading the initiatives statewide to really promote and help assist the counties to understand what they need to do to have sequential intercept mapping done in their county. At this point, I think we have 4 counties that have done sequential intercept mapping, so 4 out of our 15. So that is going to be something you'll learn more about. It gets a little more complicated than what I would want to get into, but that's why he's here and he's an expert. And but that is tremendous. That our Arizona Supreme Court and it, thank you, Justice Gould. You're going to get hit here. We're so glad Justice Gould is here, Andrew Gould from the Arizona Supreme Court, and he's going to be, as soon as I get off the stage, he's going to be coming up. But under the leadership of Chief Justice Bales, who just retired, there was a continued effort to improve mental health criminal justice collaboration. They've had 3 committees working on the topic, and one continuing as we speak. And that's really something to be proud of, that our Arizona Supreme Court thinks this is extremely important. And the leadership coming from the court, I mean, I get excited, and I don't get excited about a lot. So that is exciting. We are seeing change. We are seeing action. And one day we're going to reduce those numbers. Karen, that you have there at the Department of Corrections. We're going to reduce those numbers, and we're going to reduce the numbers of people with mental illness and addictions that are in our state prisons. It's going to happen. So I will. I think we're still waiting on the mic repair. We haven't. Audrey, any progress on the mic that's not working? Oh, okay. This mic, when we have the panels, we're going to need all of them to work. Okay. Okay, so I will let you get down to business here with Justice Andrew Gould, and I'll, Justice Gould, you can come up when you're. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I forgot Daryl. Real sorry about that. I'm not looking at my agenda. Thank you, Sherry. Daryl, I will get off. I don't have a bio for Daryl. That's what goofed me up. Daryl Phoenix, the minister from Pilgrim's Rest Church, is going to do our invocation. Thanks, Daryl.
Morning. I hope I'm not too loud. I'll try not to get too excited. But as I begin to look at the Stepping Up Initiative and David's Hope, it brings me to scripture come to mind of Ezekiel 37, when the prophet was taken to a mountain and he overlooked the valley. And in the valley there was all these dry bones. And they were very dry. And then the Bible says that God told the prophet to prophesy to the bones. And when he prophesied, there was a shaking and a noise. And the bones began to come together. And they began to connect to each other. And then skin and flesh came on the bones. And after that happened, they stood up. And when they stood up, they were a great and mighty army. So that's what I think about when we start talking about stepping up initiative. That if we can connect the 15 counties of Arizona in a way that all the rest of the nation will look at us as the model in which to tackle the challenge of behavioral health or mental health, then we will be a great and mighty army when all the counties come together and stand fast and stand firm and make some noise and connect. We can use our resources, we can use our expertise, we can use our thoughts and our decision-making abilities to make the change that Mary Lou was talking about. And in that change, God said, I will anoint that because you are united. You are one. You're not separated doing your own thing. But when you connect, you become a great and mighty force. And that's what I see as Arizona being a great and mighty force on how to manage our behavioral health, mental health issues. Amen? I know you're not at church, but say amen with me. Amen. Father, we honor you today. We thank you for being an awesome God. We thank you for the challenges before us is great, but you are greater. And we understand that united we can stand, but divided we fall. We thank you for uniting Arizona in the Stepping Up initiative to be the model that the rest of the nation model themselves after. We thank you for every worker. We thank you for our police officers, our first responders. We thank you for our mental health workers that will come together and connect. And as they connect, make us one mighty army that will stand against the challenges of mental health. That the numbers of mental health patients don't go to jail, but get treatment. We thank you for it, and we praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Jessica Eckington. I'm one of the I wanted to take a moment to introduce Gould before he comes. Justice Andrew Gould was appointed to the Arizona Supreme Court in 2017 after serving 5 years on Division I of the Arizona Court of Appeals. Prior to his appointment to the Court of Appeals, Justice Gould spent 11 years as judge of the Superior Court in Yuma County. There he served as both associate presiding judge and presiding judge. He received his JD from Northwestern University School of Law in 1990 and began his legal career in Phoenix. He was practicing in the field of civil litigation. In 1994, he became a deputy county attorney, prosecuting major criminal cases for Yuma and Maricopa counties. He served as chief civil deputy for the Yuma County Attorney's Office from 1999 to 2001. Justice Gould has previously served on the Arizona Supreme Court Commission on Technology, as the president of the Arizona Judges Association, and has taught at the Judicial Conference and the New Judges Orientations. Justice Gould currently sits as the chair on the Committee on Judicial Ethics and Training and as a member of the Glendale Judicial Selection Board. Please welcome Justice Gould.
This microphone ought to be just about right for me. Thank you for having me back this year. I enjoyed coming last year, and I thought as preparation, I would look on the Stepping Up website, see what the new developments are. I was impressed last year with what I saw, but I was astounded at the growth of the program over the past year, particularly the number of counties throughout the nation that have adopted initiatives and become involved in the program. There's more work to be done. I understand that. I understand statewide initiatives are important, but I was encouraged. I was looking at some statistics the other day about how we have dealt with mental illness. And what we used to do 70 or 80 years ago is we would house people with mental illness in quote-unquote asylums. And as late as the 1930s and 1940s, we had about 500,000 people with mental illness housed in these asylums, as they called them back then. The movement then became to move people out of those facilities, which is a good thing. And we drastically reduced the number of people in those facilities. But all we really did was move them into the jails. So we just house people with mental illness in jails primarily, and the Department of Corrections as well. When I was a judge, I would oftentimes look at defendants. See, they were young men, and I would think to myself, what was this defendant like when he was a little boy? Did he sit on somebody's knee? Did they have birthday parties for him? How did he end up here? How did somebody's little boy or little girl end up in front of me? And what a tragedy it is that all I can really do is maybe put him on probation or send him to jail. I think it speaks about the heart of a society on how it treats people who are orphans, who are vulnerable, and that includes those with mental illness. What kind of society do you have when people with mental illness, who are some of the most vulnerable people in our society, are sent to prison? Is that what we really want? Is that what we want as a society? Is we want to take people who are vulnerable and put them in prison? Treat them in prison? That's the question that we have to ask. There's a lot of scrutiny on the criminal justice system these days, and rightly so. We need to do a better job. Courts need to do a better job. I understand that. We've tried to do some things over the years. We've come up with drug courts and veterans courts and mental health courts, and those are all good things. People want us to lower recidivism. They're tired of the revolving door, so they want solutions that work, and they want to keep their communities safe at the same time. People are tired of paying money for sending people to prison and not really seeing the impact on their community, not seeing that their communities are safer. When I was in Yuma County as a judge, you tend to see things in a different way in a smaller community. I would sentence people to prison, and 1 or 2 or 3 years later, that same person was my server. When I go to Outback, they don't go away, they don't disappear. I think sometimes people think they go to prison and that's the end of the problem. It's not the end of the problem. If nothing else, if you're concerned about your community, if you think that person poses some kind of danger to the community, they're coming back to your community. You haven't solved anything. So now we have these issues, and with recent events, of course, people are looking even more closely at issues with mental illness. And here's what I would tell you is my experience as a judge and as a prosecutor. Why is it important to divert people from the criminal justice system with mental illness or mental disease? Why is it important to identify that early, especially for you police officers out there? Well, this is a fact, and it's a sad truth, perhaps an inconvenient truth, but I've seen it. The criminal justice system has a momentum to it. I've watched it. I'm not faulting anybody, I'm not casting any stones here, but the reality is, once a person has been booked and charged, the case starts rolling, and it's very hard to get the defendant out of the criminal justice system once that's happened. And typically you have a police officer who arrests and books the defendant, brings over the police reports to a prosecutor. The prosecutor looks at those reports, charges the defendant. They're brought in for a conditions of release hearing early in the case down in Justice Court and then later in Superior Court. They typically don't get out of jail, and it's not because the law requires someone with mental illness to be kept in jail. To the contrary, ARS Section 134507D requires that that not be considered as a factor in holding somebody in custody. But the reality is someone who's suffering from mental illness probably doesn't have a stable residence, probably doesn't have stable employment, probably has self-medicated and so has substance abuse, probably has been involved in a number of petty crimes and trespasses and shoplifting and all that. And so the report that a judge gets is flight risk, and so the conditions are stricter, the bond may be higher. And so once the case is charged, the police officer may or may not have been trained to identify mental illness issue. I know that there are great initiatives going forward now to help train them, but many of them may not be trained in that. They're invested in the case. The prosecutors charge the case. They're invested in the case. There may be a victim. That victim may not be a family member, so it may not be somebody who knows the defendant well. They simply know that they've trespassed in their lawn or stolen a bicycle out of their backyard or whatever the case may be. And so they're invested in the case. And so it's very difficult to get the case dismissed or to move it in a different direction. That is the reality of the system. And so what you have is once the defendant is brought in and charged, they remain in custody and the case moves on down the line. Now, there are opportunities along the way to identify those mental health issues. Typically, that's by the defense attorney. If the defense attorney takes the time to sit down with their client and go over the reports early in the case, then it can be identified early in the case. But it could be 2 months, 3 months before they actually sit down and really identify the problem. They can bring up the issue to the judge, request a Rule 11 evaluation. You all know what that is. That's a competency evaluation. That is not necessarily a perfect way to deal with the problem. It takes time to schedule those evaluations. Oftentimes it's a screening evaluation. If you don't know, under Arizona law, the fact that you have a mental illness does not render you incompetent. We have the Dusky standard in Arizona, and that is you don't have a rational understanding of the proceedings, you're unable to assist counsel in your defense. It is a very low standard. I'm not criticizing the standard. I'm just telling you when a psychiatrist or a psychologist most often does a screening evaluation, applying those standards, very often it's going to come back competent to stand trial. And so the case will continue rolling along. Even if during the screening evaluation, the expert identifies a competency problem, there are a number of things that can happen at that point. If the judge hasn't ordered the psychologist to also go into a full screening evaluation, then you have to order a full screening evaluation. That can take a couple of months. Maybe the prosecutor wants their own expert. Maybe you have a contested hearing. And then maybe at the end of the day, the conclusion is not competent, but restorable. And then you go through the restoration process. That can take months. I have had defendants come into my court when I was a trial judge on a low-level property-type crime, and it has taken close to a year to resolve the competency issue. And at the end of that process, they are found competent, and they've been in custody the whole time. Or a crime where if they just come in and pled guilty, they just would have gone to the Department of Corrections for 85% of a 1-year sentence. They would have already been out. But the system rolls along. And then what happens is typically a defendant with a mental illness or disease is not very effective in assisting their counsel, not very effective in preparing a defense. Those cases don't go to trial very often. They plead guilty. That's what happens. And so the defendant is placed on probation most often. And what is the likelihood of success for that defendant on probation? Not very good. They may have mental health regulations, they may go to treatment, but they have other requirements, and they cannot comply with those requirements. They have difficulty. And that may be neither here nor there. You may think that that's good that they have those other requirements, showing up in the office, maintaining a residence, all those kinds of things. But in the criminal justice system, at some point, if you don't comply with those other requirements, what is the consequence? It's a sanction. What's the sanction? It's incarceration. And when you're a judge, people can be critical of you, but what am I to do? I have a defendant who's been put on probation. I have very minimal knowledge about how he adapts or she adapts and functions in day-to-day life. I have a series of violations where I have basically one probation officer who's just trying to help this one defendant on probation, and at some point, I'm going to violate that defendant and sentence him or her to prison. And of course, it's a low-level felony most often, and 9 months, 18 months later, they're back in my court again for a similar offense. This is a typical case that I had, and I'm obviously not going to use any names, but I had this scenario repeated time and time again. A young man is SMI. He's probably 23, 24 years old. He's been having some problems, especially since he hit about 16 or 17 years old. And mother is trying to help him, but she remarries, and stepdad doesn't want any part of this, kicks him out of the house, gets an order of protection. So son is on the streets, and he decides he's hungry one day. He goes back to the house and breaks in to get some food. Neighbor sees him break into the home, calls the police. Police come into the house. He's sitting at the kitchen table, eating ice cream at the table, and he's charged with a Class 3 felony residential burglary because, under the law, he has unlawfully entered the home with the intent to commit a theft therein, the theft being the ice cream. And so he's pending a Class 3 felony. Mother is trying to tell defense counsel, a public defender, about the mental health issues. Some of that gets communicated to the court, some of it doesn't. There's a Rule 11 evaluation, found competent to stand trial, even though there are some mental health issues. The defendant pleads guilty to maybe a Class 5 or a Class 6 felony, trespassing, placed on probation. After several violations, is revoked and sentenced to prison. Defendant is back in my court after he finishes his prison sentence within a month or a similar type offense, and it goes on and on and on. So I guess my point to you is what stepping up is trying to do, and the police officers and the detention facility people who are here today know this far better than me, is to try to identify those individuals with SMI and try to divert them out of that system so they don't get caught up into the momentum of that criminal justice process that is cumbersome and just seems to roll on down the track, not just to conviction, but to violation and prison. It doesn't seem to be a very effective way to deal with the problem to me. And I'm not saying that cases can't get dismissed that deal with mental illness, but let's be honest. How often does that happen? Not very often. I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just saying it doesn't happen very often. I am encouraged by what I see. I'm encouraged by these programs. Chief Justice Bales was very supportive, and I know Chief Justice Brutinel will remain committed as well. But you have to recognize that the courts have their limitations too. Some of these things are statutory, and it is the duty of the legislature to address them. Courts don't make policy. We can do certain things, we can help with rules, but it's the legislature's responsibility at some point in terms of how they define some of these crimes, dealing with mental illness issues. The responsibility at some point has to lie there. We've made some good changes. There was a change to Rule 11 It used to be that justices of the peace couldn't even order Rule 11 proceedings. It had to go up to Superior Court, which caused a huge amount of delay. And we've changed that rule. We have the ability to do that. Where now, if the defendant is charged with a misdemeanor or pending felony charges and they're in justice court on a felony complaint, JP can start those proceedings earlier. So that's a good change. There's a lot of issues with bail reform that indirectly, I believe, have helped defendants with SMI. I guess my last point that I would make to you today is there's a certain inhumanity to this that is troubling. It is inhumane at some point to take people with mental illness, criminalize it, and sentence them to prison. How would you feel if it was your child, your loved one? I recognize that there are some issues. If someone commits a triple homicide, then if there's mental illness involved, that's going to be dealt with by the criminal justice system. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about cases that involve property crimes, minor felonies, misdemeanors, where it becomes a revolving door. So let me conclude with this. I look around this room and I see a lot of committed people. And the fact of the matter is that there are millions of people outside these doors who don't have a clue what you're doing. And worse yet, they don't appreciate what you're doing. But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because the people who matter are in this room right now. And they know what you're doing. And they appreciate what you're doing. And what's most important when you give yourself to a cause is that those that understand the cause, those that understand what you're doing, appreciate it. So I'm glad that you're all here together. I'm glad you're going to have an award ceremony because you can build each other up and you can edify each other for this very honorable and important cause. So thank you for having me here today.